We had a situation where this young man was found hanging from a tree, 24 years old, in a public place with a flag waving in the background. And the first thing they go to is suicide. For us, that imagery takes us to a very dark place in our history. And for us, the first thing is not the thought of suicide. But we have to deal with that. If it wasn't for members of the community like yourselves, we wouldn't even be here, because they would have dismissed this young man. I dare say, if this had been a 24-year-old white man, if this had been a 24-year-old white woman, there would have been a detailed investigation. There would have been a thorough analysis. They would have made sure that every I was dotted, every T was crossed, every stone unturned to get to the result. But when it's Robert Fuller, they dismiss him.
24 years old. Haven't had a chance really to do anything. Cut off. Whatever reason, whatever caused it, it was cut off.
No cameras, nothing else. Nobody saw anything. And it just seems like such an isolated incident. It just made me concerned. It made me concerned because it brought back historic experiences where blacks would die in jail all of a sudden in the 30s and 40s and 50s. So it brought back history of terrorism.
It's really crazy to all of us. And we really are here to support Robert, and we really want to find out the truth of what really happened. Yeah. Robert was a good little brother to us. And it's like everything that they've been telling us has not been right. We've been hearing one thing, then we hear another. Right. And we just want to know the truth.
Robert Fuller! Robert Fuller! Robert Fuller!
We're going to keep our foot on their neck because we don't get tired. We are relentless on behalf of our community and our state.
We had one of the biggest cases of police excessive force happen in the 1970s with my great aunt, which was Eula Love, who was shot in front of her home and in front of her children by the LAPD over a unpaid utility bill.
A lot of what is very, I feel like, uncomfortable for a lot of people is that it had a very dark undertone to it, tied to the history of lynching and the possibility of it being a hate crime, but that part wasn't investigated as far as this valley is concerned.
I was born on what is called a sharecropper's plantation in Bahia, Mississippi. By that time, I was 8 and 9 years old, and many times my mama and daddy would say, all right, we're gonna have to stay in the house tonight because we heard there's gonna be a lynching. Oh, gosh. Wow. That's 80 years ago, and I'm still, I can see that as if I was right there right now.
It makes you react. It makes you say, I want to know more, and we should want to know more. The fact that the media responded, that's also important. It says the media says that, you know, this might be an act of inhumanity between man, and you want to understand that, which is a crime, and you want to know more.
The rope and fabric was tied directly to the tree branches in more than one spot, accessible only from up in the tree, indicating that the victim was not hoisted into that position. Detectives identified a purchase from a local Dollar Tree store made on May 14, 2020, in which a red rope, consistent with the one used in the hanging, was purchased with the EBT card registered to Mr. Fuller. Just this afternoon, the medical examiner issued their final autopsy report and delivered it to the Sheriff's Department and deemed this case to be a suicide.
The fact that it took so long, the fact that it took the heavy pressure from the community in order to get this done this way, that it took us putting pressure on the sheriff stations and the mayors and the assistant mayor and the city managers for these things to happen the way that it did and for these requests to be made, because I believe that if someone's life is of importance, then it should be investigated that way. And there's no life that's more important than the next. So if this was a different person, if this was of what our society would consider a higher class, or a higher socioeconomic standing, then it wouldn't have been this way.
There was a time that for Black communities, the ideas of Blacks killing themselves was too far-fetched. You know, there's so much they had to deal with in terms of racism, institutional terrorism. But even nowadays, we're beginning to understand that suicide happens in the Black community, and males overwhelmingly account for most of those deaths.
Why then, given that there is no foul play, are we choosing to talk about it, to continue to talk about it, right? I would offer that we're doing so because although there may not have been foul play, we recognize that there's something distinctly foul about it. In a piece in the LA Times, one of your colleagues wrote that, Robert Fuller was a young man who needed help. And I agree, but I think I would say it differently. I would say he didn't need any more help than anybody else, but that he did not get the help that is something that many of us simply accept and believe is our right. So in the Robert Fuller case, I would say it's not a single failure of a single person. It is a deep and pervasive failure from morning to night, every day in the life of somebody. And I would say that suicide is something that we must pay attention to because it is among the big inequalities.
We have people that we put in place that's responsible for thinking about this. So you have congressional leadership, you have presidential leadership, you have state leadership, you have leadership of agencies, and you cannot accept we're working on it. Because that's been the response. Oh, we're working on it. We got a plan. No, you got to see an investment in capacity. You got to see an investment in studying what works. And absent of that, then we have what I call leadership malpractice. And right now, we're not seeing enough people gearing up to say something bigger is coming. And if our behavioral health system right now is overwhelmed, what happens when that wave of grief and complicated grief hits? What happens now that kids haven't been able to school? They have a sense of loss. Children who have lost a sense of graduation, prom, individuals who lost their jobs, promotions, families who have lost key occasions, right? Families who have lost individuals. I mean, there's a lot coming.
We don't know what they could have contributed. And every person has a major contribution to the collective quality of our lives. So you have to ask yourself, what else are you robbing? Who else are you taking? What else did you take from them before the opportunity to even grow up? Robert Fuller was in his 20s. These men were young. They didn't even know who they were yet. They were still discovering parts of themselves. They haven't even fully developed yet. And we'll never know what contributions they have.
I think Robert's life has certainly raised our sensitivity to being more one than divided. I think that his life also means to young Black men to be sensitive to the fact that, yes, you got life to live, but be sensitive that there are things that can stop you if you're not focused right. And I, for one, share with my brothers and sisters in this room and in this family to let them know that I'm a witness, that you will give them a peace that they did not know they had.